Welcome to Dropped In, Devin. I am so excited and honored to welcome you to our Dropped In community.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. It's a delight to finally meet you.
Yes, well, I have shivers, so that's always a good sign that we are on path, soul's truth. And I found out about you through Marcia and your incredible interview together. And so I knew I just had to welcome you to the community.
I appreciate it. I just love Marshall. We just recorded a second one last month and we rambled something fierce, but it was so lovely.
Oh, that's so cool. I can't wait to listen to it. So cool. So, for those listening, can you share who you are, what you do, and why you are passionate about it?
Okay. Well, my name is Devin Scott. Right now I live in New York City, though I am moving to Thailand at the end of the year. I'm a psychosomatic bodywork therapist. I work in this kind of strange niche, which is that I have a background licensure in psychotherapy and bodywork, so massage therapy. And I kind of combine the two. So I pull from osteopathic modalities like craniosacral therapy, visceral manipulation, and then I pull from Eastern modalities like Thai massage and shiatsu to work
Mm.
very subtly and energetically on the body. And as stored narratives come arising, we process them together as I continue working on the body. And then I have a branch of my work that's virtual, where it's more distance healing and mindfulness focused. Why I'm passionate about it, one, I just love working with my hands. The more I got into body work, the more I just found it like a constant, beautiful meditation. And so for me, it's really relaxing.
Mm.
But bigger than that, I think I just saw that the way we were healing some things in the West, we're often not healing them at all and sometimes making them worse. And I just kept looking for deeper, richer, more holistic traditions. I kept finding them in old theory and old practices like yoga and then in the osteopathic communities. And I love them. I love seeing the world as a metaphor, as something to be questioned, but maybe not understood and just
Mm.
witnessed.
Mm. Oh my goodness. Aren't you the brightest light?
That's very sweet.
And you're moving to Thailand. We have so much to talk about. Okay, so why are you moving to Thailand and what made you decide to take that next step?
So I moved to New York a year and a half ago. No, almost 2 years ago. I guess like 20 months ago. And New York was not great for me. Um, I I came here with a clinical supervisor who really didn't like me, and I rolled into a relationship that had a very unhinged, bizarre plot line, where he got into a secret dom sub relationship, and I became a sex toy instead of a boyfriend, and it was very um, jarring, and I fell into kind of a spiritual crisis here,
Mm.
and it was very hard to continue doing the work when I was kind of having a dark night of the soul, and as I was finally coming out of it, feeling like I was getting back into my energy, I just realized I was not going to be able to finish the healing work here. Um, that I've been shaken so fundamentally, I needed to give myself space to really integrate what happened,
Mhm.
to reorient and to allow that process space to unfold. And I have some roots in Thailand because I finished high school in the south of Thailand and I have a family that I lived with there. I've always wanted to go back and live for an extended period of time. My Thai has gotten rusty 20 years later. It'd be nice to get it back to fluency. But I think this is just the next chapter and then I'll come back.
Mhm.
But this is just, I need the space.
Mm. Oh my goodness. Well, I honor you for taking that time to go back to your roots, and I'm so excited to see what this next chapter leads you and where you go with it.
Me too.
Yeah. So the power of touch, let's talk about that because I know from what you share, you're just so passionate about working with your hands. So why the power of touch and why is it so important?
Well, biologically, I think we're really built for touch. You can see this kind of across traditions, especially in the early years of life. The whole Renmai and the Chinese meridian system is about how well we received what they call like the maternal matrix,
Mhm.
which is touch and food and warmth. So obviously, you can receive it from men too. But this kind of yin aspect of life, do we feel like we're held by the world, and how does that prepare us to then explore the world? And I don't think we ever lose this necessity of touch, warmth, food, though we pretend we do.
Mm.
And, we have these type C nerve fibers that, once we get held or touched for 30 seconds, it has like a whole structure of events that go through our body to put us into parasympathetic, to calm us, to bring us into connection. There is just such wonder in touch that I think we've lost sight of. And we tend to move touch into the categories of sex and violence. And there's just so much more to it than those two things.
Mhm. Mm. Yes. I couldn't agree more. Now, before we hit record, we were talking about your trip to Bali and your 11-day experience with learning, well, deepening your cranial sacral work.
Yeah.
I remember going to Sedona, one of my most favorite places, and I found this healer who did cranial sacral, and this is way like years and years ago. Had no idea what it was, and it completely cracked me open. So, can you share more about cranial sacral and why it's so effective?
Yeah. So craniosacral therapy is an osteopathic form of manual medicine, essentially, but it comes from that tradition. And now it's largely not doctors of osteopathy who practice it, but anyone who has a license to touch. And the core tenet of craniosacral therapy is that you touch the body and connect to that body's inner wisdom and give the body the space and the environment to start healing itself. So it's largely a practice of witnessing. So when you are working on the body, it is mostly fascial. There's this other energetic layer as well. And fascia is always energetic work too, where you go to critical parts of the body and you put your hands very gently on the body and you wait and listen until the fascia starts to essentially move your hand. And this direction is the body's request for how to unspool an adhesion or a set of adhesions below it. And then when it starts to relax, you listen to that, what we call a therapeutic pulse, which is you stay there to watch the healing unfold, to witness the body and support it as it's doing it. And you do this anywhere on the body, but they concentrate on some like really core areas, including the fascial diaphragms, which are the ones that run horizontally in our body, whereas most of our fascia runs north south. And you do that because what they say car accidents happen at intersections. So these are the intersections of our body where our fascia is moving in multiple directions. So it's just more likely to have problems. And then in the brain, because it's fundamentally started as a nervous system body therapy. And so you work to release all of the dura and fascia in the brain and the spinal cord because that really opens up the body to relaxation.
Mhm. And as someone on the receiving end, you can literally feel your system unwinding. It's like a rewiring, but it's profound. I am obsessed with cranial sacral. So,
It really is magical. Sometimes it feels a bit like a cult, but it's one that I've a bit bought into. There are a lot of other modalities that are similar, and I try to mix and match, but like you go in and you see the people who love it so deeply, and there's a real reason that they have. There's some people who just practice cranial sacral because, like what it gave you, it can really change someone when it does.
mhm, yeah, it's a real unwinding. It's profound. You spoke about fascia. I don't know if like fascia is all the rage right now, but I think because I was on my own healing quest over this last year, I'm just seeing so much about fascia work now. Can you speak more into that and why it's so important?
Yeah, and I'll put the umbrella caveat is that fascia is still a mystery. Like it
Mm.
captured Western research attention really like 20 years ago when people started to pay attention to what was just thought of as like stuff that filled the space of our body. But then they started to look at it in a Western sense and they found that what we have is fascia, this connective tissue that runs through our whole body and connects every single piece of our cell and even goes down into the cells themselves. So it is one system that gets our whole body communicating as one system. It's widely thought that it's a critical part of the meridian systems and the Sen system and Thai massage because they largely track the fascial trains and the key points in fascia are actually largely the acupoints, but there's more to it. So we know that fascia is bioelectric. There are things, bioelectricity moving through it. We know it has kind of a strange grid system. I've heard it described as a potential quantum computer that we don't understand because the way it can store its fascia, it always is reorganizing himself in a new grid. And there are theorists who believe there's information stored in there
Mm.
that we don't understand yet. And then it also transports nutrients. And if you look back at Chinese medicine, there's the belief that also holds things like the Jing and the Qi, which might just be things that we don't understand yet that are in our fluid systems because there is a whole set of fluid mechanics running through the fascia. But the short of it is, it's kind of like alive and it keeps everything in our body talking. And when you look at body mechanics, it's really just more important than muscles. There's a crude saying, but I'm gonna try to avoid a better one, which is that muscle is essentially the servant of fascia. Like muscle is inconsequential. It is bound to fascia, and fascia is what governs our body mechanics. Um, but the mystery of it is when you're talking to it, and I think acupuncturists often say something similar, you're not in conversation with tissue, you're in conversation with some form of consciousness, it seems, that
Mhm.
that easily speaks when you listen to it.
Mhm. Yes. I've recently heard that the fascia is the subconscious of the body. Would you agree with that?
In my experience, I think it is.
Okay.
It's maybe more complex than that, but I think there's consciousness imbued in the fascia that we can't explain in Western anatomy.
Yeah. It's wild where I've heard when I was in yoga teacher training, it was like the issues are in the tissues, and I understood it at that time, but now to the depth of the work that I do and what I've seen through various therapies, it's phenomenal what is released when you can show the body that it's safe to start to release this energy it's been holding on to, the emotions it's been holding on to as well.
Yeah, and I think it's okay that there's a bit of mystery. I've noticed as it became a trendier word, although now I think lymph is becoming even trendier. Um, there just became so many, like, kind of pedantic scientific debates about whether the consciousness is in the brain or the fascia, and I think sometimes it just loses the point of it. When you are working on fascia, people have enormous emotional releases. Whether that is moving back up through the brain by origin of the fascia or if it's stored in the fascia itself, I'm not sure I care that much. But the mechanic is somewhere in the process that when you release something that's stored physically in that fascia, to release the storage of it, often we have to release the story that was present at the time it formed.
Mhm. I believe that. I've been releasing some big emotions as a result from doing my own fascia work at home, and it's so therapeutic, it's so healing.
It is. Yin yoga is often like catastrophically emotional for me.
Yeah, good old yin yoga, same with kundalini yoga. Have you practiced that one?
I do, but I don't love it. My personal therapist is a Kundalini yoga teacher, and I think there's something about the white outfits and the repetition of words that like almost makes you worried I'm in a cult, even though I always feel better after the practice.
Yes.
Um, so I've always been slow to get on the train, but I have mentors who really love it.
Yeah, I get that. I'm actually trained in kundalini yoga and meditation. However, I took a feminine approach to it, and I play, like, house music, and I don't wear all
Ooh,
white. Yeah, I'm a bit of a rebel, Devin. I'm a bit of a rebel, so
good.
yeah.
I expected nothing less from you.
Ah, so for those that don't know what somatic healing is, can you share what it is specifically and why it's so important?
So I think this is also one of those trendy things that got poorly defined as it got trendy.
Yeah.
And I can't say my definition is the best, but I think of somatic healing as dealing with the issue at its root.
Mhm.
Um, and I think what gets lost in the debate often is that sometimes people who are somatic think that they're not working with the mind, and people who are mind based think they're not working with the body. And I do see them as one. I think of somatic healing as including the body and what used to be cognitive processes. And so my theory around it is like you're working with physical sensations and you're tracking thoughts. It's all somatic processing, somatic dialoguing. And all of this, it exists in the body at one level, but our cognition around it exists in a totally different system. Pain is not a physical process. Pain is a psychological process. It's just occurring at a different part of our brain than our thinking. So my thought is if we're having pain, we look at it at the part of the brain or possibly the fascia if that's where the consciousness is for it and processing it there at the root before it moves to another part of our consciousness. If we're dealing with emotions, we're dealing them at the root. That might be hormonal, that might be within our limbic brain, and that includes a whole mapping across our body of what it looks and feels like.
Mhm.
And that's one aspect of it. We're not centralizing the prefrontal cortex and the parts of our brain that form the ego as God. We're going to the lower parts of the brain that experience things as poetry and as metaphor. And the other part of it is acknowledging that our body just has physical needs. And so part of somatic work is centralizing breath work, movement, verbalization, touch, actual physical body work. And remembering that healing as a system means that we can't just heal the brain, we have to be in touch with the system. And so it brings us back into these body based practices as well, which then feed up to the upper layers too.
Mhm.
Was that a very rambly explanation?
No, it was perfect. It was beautiful, and it's fascinating when you're in this field of work, and then all of a sudden everything becomes this big trend, you know? Like the nervous system, fascia, the limbic system, like a lymphatic system. It's just like, yeah, it's all these trends, but it's like, well, how long have you been doing this work, Devin? Like, how long have you been a practitioner of this work?
I started my transition to this kind of work 8 years ago, and I've been transitioning to body work for 4 years. So I'm newer to the body work world. I came into it while fascia was extremely trendy. And I'm always getting new skills. So if you talk to me in 2 years, I'll have a slightly different way of describing what I do, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I feel that big time. You mentioned at the very beginning, the difference between working with, like, the Western world and the Eastern world. Can we dive deeper into that? Because it's yeah, that's my language you're speaking there.
So I'm like, where do I even want to begin? I think the Western world often is very rigid in having a hyper literal description of what's happening.
Mm,
And when we lack the hyper literal understanding, we kind of just give up.
mhm,
Um, and that's not to say I don't like anything in the West. I kind of love my Western anatomy training. It allows me a real precision in where I put my hands and things like that. When you learn the Eastern perspectives, they treat the body almost as poetry or as metaphor. It doesn't need to be understood entirely, but you're looking for kind of the moral or parable or story of what's happening and speaking to the body back in metaphor. It requires just less precision, less hyper literalism. And that's why I think they immediately latched on to fascia in a way that took us so long because we got really fixated looking at really small parts. And then we lose sight of systems because to do the kind of research that fuels Western research, it has to be really, really small things. We get really, really, really good at descriptive research of what's happening at the smallest level. But then it's hard to do research of that kind about how does this cell then impact my fingernail on the opposite hand or something like that. And we see that in body mechanics where we put muscles as God in body mechanics for a long time, only to find that fascia is much more God than body mechanics. And then there's a whole other layer of just nervous system regulation is actually also one of the gods of if we can stretch. But then the Eastern perspective asks other questions of like, what is it to be a person? What is spirituality? How is spirituality blended in anatomy? And then you start looking at the anatomies where we have tiers of consciousness, different spirits in us. And you start to understand that actually, maybe we're not just a physical body.
mhm,
Maybe we don't need to understand consciousness to understand that we have levels of it, that there's
mhm,
multiple things going on. Um, and I increasingly tend to see the body towards that metaphorical poetry based lens where I don't necessarily need to be able to describe exactly what's happening, but I need to be able to listen deeply.
mm. Yes, I love that. That is the differentiator is to be able to have that ability to listen deeply, isn't it?
I think so. And
Mhm.
not believing that getting the answer really matters or understanding the answer if it comes. You might witness the change and still leave perplexed.
Right. 100%. 100%. You also mentioned, and I'm going to assume because you spoke about it, that you are, as Marsha would say, you're on the story, not in it. But your experience in New York and how it was like the dark night of the soul. Can you speak more into that and like how you support yourself through that?
Oh, it was rough.
Yeah.
um, when I got here, it was like everything in life just immediately became uneasy.
Mm,
And it just ended up being a downward kind of spiral where I had two people I think, fairly describe as very sadistic in my life. I had a supervisor who systematically tried to set up traps for me. And I really figured out what was happening. It was too late.
mm,
And then I had the ex who I was engaging an entire kink life to humiliate me. And it took me 8 months to figure it out.
wow.
And in the background of that, I ended up getting sick and then having chronic fatigue for 5 months. I had a whole family issue. I got locked in my landslides on a hike, and then my nervous system was just decaying. And I am an energy worker, so I'm very open. But when you're going on subways and things like that, and then we had the worst winter here we've had for a long time. Anyway, there was just a conglomeration of just a bunch of things. My whole body was so overwhelmed. And at the same time, my spirituality was collapsing because so much of what kept me going for so long was maybe this like vague spiritual hope or wish that everyone is a spiritual body and that everyone is full of love and that maybe even good begets good. And this almost like prophylactic set of spirituality tendencies collapsed around me. And in the process, hope collapsed because those beliefs are what kept me going even in the darkest nights. And I no longer felt like I could sustain them with integrity. And yeah, I think one level, something that kept me going was the belief that suffering, if allowed, always begets growth. So I always had one level of consciousness reminding me that I will come out of this. Like,
Mhm.
I will drag myself out of this. It can take time.
Yeah.
Um, and I did. I came out of my spirituality with a much more nuanced, less dogmatic version of spirituality where, like, I'm open to the idea that everyone has good in them, but I no longer require it.
Mhm.
I don't believe everyone has to be born with the same nugget of spirituality that I have, the same nugget of love. Like, I'm always willing to see the good in people, but I no longer have this almost like reductive view that I must see good in them.
Mm,
I'm just very open, just seeing things as they are. I also came to believe I'm not a creator of my life, but a co-creator in a very deep way.
mhm,
It really like enforced me to look at my limitations of my power and to embrace them, but to develop this deepened sense of trust. I think the bigger question is I just allowed myself to heal imperfectly.
mm,
Um, there were days I was just like, I can't do this for another day. I can't do this for another day. And, it's always that meditative practice of like, if I'm surviving this moment, I can survive the next. And there are a lot of moments like that. And I was doing some work on it every day, but I was not resourced to do all the work all the time. And so I was also just trying to bring a lot of play into my life, a lot of rest, but I also allowed in a level of numbing I hadn't had for years. I drank more. I scrolled Instagram for the first time in my life and got lost in that. And so I just had moments in my life where I was just in too much pain to let that level of consciousness in 24/7.
yeah,
And so I titrated it.
mhm,
And little by little, as long as I did the work that I was resourced to do every day, it kept improving. And on the other side of that, I was just allowing myself to be a messy human doing his best and not hating myself.
mm, bless. That is the work right there, right? I think we can put so much pressure on ourselves, especially in the quote unquote healing world is like everything you have to do everything precise and perfect and like there's no such thing. There's no such thing as linear healing. And being able to have that capacity to meet yourself where you're at. And you mentioned the numbing aspect, and I have a perspective on that. And so were you aware of like, I get that you are aware of it now. Were you aware of it when you were in that field of numbing, if you will?
Oh, definitely. Um, and even like my best friend, like bless her, um, I got into this spiral of watching like tarot readers on Instagram, which I think is probably horribly bad for me, but like it was somehow like a soothing balm on the soul
Mm,
watching these tarot readers. And I think there are kind of like ones that make fun of them. I read tarot, so I believe in tarot. I'm just not sure if I think this is the healthiest corner of Instagram. People like reading Pokemon cards, like he'll come back to you. He's going to apologize. And it's like a Charizard and things like that. It kind of feels like this, but there were just moments I needed to feed this delusion of myself that he was gonna come back and apologize or that someone was gonna come back and make amends because my body, my soul just wasn't yet ready to tolerate the reality that it wasn't coming.
Mhm.
And so I needed to like feed the delusion of hope for a little longer to get myself to the next day. And so she'd be like, maybe just watch tarot for a little bit. And we both knew what I was doing, but she knew it would soothe the pain enough that day to get me to the next.
Mm.
Um, but there were all sorts of like little quote unquote unhealthy habits that were creeping in at that time. But I knew as long as I kept doing the work, any unhealthy habit that creeped, I could creep it back out once I felt healthy again.
Mm.
Um, and I don't stigmatize any of these kinds of numbing things carte blanche. I think sometimes what in Chinese medicine they'd call the Po, like our corporeal soul, the one that brings us in the here and now. There are times in our life it checks out. Like if we're in a car accident, it's leaving.
Yeah.
Like because it's too painful to be in the body in that moment. And that's actually, in my mind, very adaptive. It's a
Mhm.
very crushing belief that we're meant to be so present all the time. Because sometimes that is just too much.
It is. Too much, and that's trauma too, too much too soon, right?
Yeah.
So, in those moments and you had the awareness of the numbing and you were leaning and using the tools that you had, what tools specifically were you using to kind of get yourself back online?
So a lot of somatic movement. I'm a big believer in dance.
Yes, me
Um,
too.
I don't know the mechanics of it, but I just think conscious movement changes us in ways that is really hard to understand. So
Mhm.
I danced as much as possible. I do a lot of breath work, but I have to say my breath work practice was kind of failing me in this time. It just wasn't working in the way it's worked in the past. I think it was just so dysregulated that I need something a lot more. I did quite a bit of meditation and with a focus on somatic meditation.
Mhm.
I journaled a lot. I always do a lot of like asana practice. But when I found myself actually kind of cautious around some of the things because I'd gotten into this weird pattern in the things that harmed me in New York of gaslighting myself in part by engaging these practices so prolifically that I
Mhm.
could tolerate being uncomfortable more than I should have allowed.
Right.
So I was also like reintegrating my asana practice into my life, knowing that I had just used it on its shadow side to sustain something that was harming me.
Mm.
And so that was a slow get back. I was in therapy every week. I got a lot of body work. I think that 11 days of craniosacral eventually was the thing that moved me. I ended up with PTSD during this. Like, got high blood pressure. I was constantly jittery. I had a scare that it was autoimmune. But actually, like, I got myself through 4 months getting a little bit better. And then the 11 days of craniosacral finally allowed my body to drop. Um, in part, we had a water day of like doing 3 therapists on 1 client. We all had a session as client, and I was just in the water shaking and sobbing for an hour, being held by 3, like, beautiful female therapists who did such gorgeous work on me, and that day just, like, broke me open.
Mhm.
Um, but I needed something maybe that big. I was doing the work, but it was just slow going, and sometimes you just need a lot of hands on your body.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing. Thank you for trusting this space.
Of course.
Yeah. This is big work, my friend. I honor you. I see you because I know, the work that I do and the work that I've been doing throughout my life. It's easy for people to not do it. Would you agree?
Oh my god, our whole body seems built to not do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so most people, especially like when you say the dark night of the soul, most people are like, I don't want anything to do with this, you know? And from doing this work and leaning in, what is a message that you can share with somebody who is so afraid towards the shadowy parts?
Mm. I think it's I don't even know where to start, but one thing I will say is I think it's really hard to sustain the work without having a personal spirituality
Mhm.
because this work gets so murky and so messy that so often, especially if you believe there's just a physical world, you just want so badly to run back into it and engage in the status quo, take the path of least resistance. And at least for me, the thing that has kept me trucking my whole life to find something deeper is my belief that there is something deeper.
Yeah.
'Cause the spiritual journey or the healing journey does not only bring greener pastures, it brings clearer pastures, more diverse pastures. But actually, the more you confront yourself, the more challenge comes in other ways. Um, I'm not one to moralize that everyone has to do the work, though. I'm sure I've had a banal set of lifetimes where I just swam in lakes and ate good food and really didn't think too much about my subconscious. And all those lifetimes were equally necessary.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm not one to really even shame or stigmatize people who don't do the work.
Mhm.
But I think for those who want to do the work, who just have a belief that the world has more to offer them than the script they were handed,
Mhm.
that work, I think, needs to be couched in something that feels much larger than themselves.
Mhm. Yeah, well said, well said. And with that, I know that this work has literally saved my life, literally, right? Yeah, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for this work, so, yeah, thank you for sharing that. I could be here with you all day, Devin. How can people learn more about the work that you do? How can they work with you? That's all the things.
I have a website. It's www.findyourmeaning.coach. I think that's where I'll send people. There's a newsletter at the bottom. You can always email me. I have an Instagram, but I need to change it by the end of the year. Right now, it's devinscott.nyc. And come October, I will no longer be in New York City. So perhaps if it's before October when this releases, you can find me there. If not, look at my Instagram through my website is
Okay,
the better path.
awesome. Beautiful. All right. So before we say goodbye for now, what is a message of hope that you can offer the listeners for those that feel that maybe they want to quit or throw in the towel?
This is not hope, but I will say you always have to permission every aspect of yourself. And so I think you really have to permission that you are allowed to quit if you want to make that choice.
Mm,
Because to live in this work in active resistance, suppressing a part of you that wants to run back instead of holding and comforting that part only makes the work harder.
mhm, mm,
So allow that part of yourself. And I'll say one more thing, which is that I think it's very easy to be existentially dreadful in this moment in life. There's just a lot happening. Um, I always try to maintain a level of existential curiosity, which for me is the antidote of like, I don't think we need to gaslight or suppress ourselves to believe that things are necessarily getting better first or good is necessarily coming. But I think it's really expansive to believe that there are interesting things coming, even from the bad. The bad clears space for something new to build. I
mm,
I travel through Europe and I think I go through a city and I think this city was leveled 80 years ago and they built something incredible on top of it. And people are resilient. And we can't build what came before and we can't sustain what we have now. But people, given the opportunity, always build new cool things. And we'll get to see what cool things we build, what cool things the world builds. And that comes with grieving the current moment, but we can stay curious about what space is being cleared by all the things that are being moved.
Mic drop after mic drop after mic drop. Oh, thank you so much, Devin. You truly are such a bright light, and the world is a much better place because of you. So thank you for the work that you do.
I really appreciate this. I've enjoyed this conversation. I'm just so excited I finally got to meet you. It's been a few months coming.
I know. I know. Yeah, I knew I had to have you here. So thank you for sharing your light. Thank you for everything you shared today and for everything that you do. So grateful for you.
You too, Megan.